Tonight on Chimstock Africa, my guest is Iyin Aboyeji. He is often referred to as the Zuckerberg of Africa, with a global recognition as one of the most influential tech entrepreneurs in Africa. Iyin sits down today to share with me about his upbringing and the vision that drives him to bring transformation all across Africa. Hi there, and welcome to this segment of your show. Like I said in the introduction, my guest today is a man who's been called the Mark Zuckerberg of Africa. Iyin Aboyeji is the founder of some of the well-known tech companies in Africa, Flutterwave, for example, in Nigeria, as well as the global company Andela, which he co-founded with several others. And today he's the leader of the Future Africa, if I'm correct.
Future Africa.
Iyin, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Pastor.
Thank you so much for honoring our invitation.
No, my pleasure.
I know how busy it is for you.
Always have to make time for things of God.
What I said now is not my invention. I mean, you have been called the Mark Zuckerberg of Africa. You've been called so many things. You'll be listed as one of the top 100 personalities in Africa by the New Africa magazine. You are known as one of the most influential tech personalities, fintech personalities or tech personalities in Africa. How did you get here? Where did you sit down somewhere? Obama decided he was going to be president from primary school. So where did you start? How did it start? Where did it come from?
To be very honest, the way I would put it is that I'm a direct product of grace, right? I didn't plan most of these things, and sometimes, I hear people talk about these things in those terms. It doesn't feel that way to me. I'm mostly just doing God's work, just doing my best within my sphere. But it's always incredible to see the impact. And there's a verse in scripture, where people were talking about Jesus and they said, no one can do these things except God is with him. And that's a verse of scripture I always hold on to whenever I hear all these accolades, because I know that it's not me, right? But I actually came into tech completely by accident. Growing up in Lagos, we're a low middle class family. My family changed fortunes through the period of my life. I sort of started with my parents, so I watched them, grow by the grace of God. And the one thing that they prioritized was a good education, regardless of our financial circumstances. My father really, really sacrificed, and my mother really, really sacrificed to make sure we went to schools that were, quite frankly, outside of our income range and station. And so, as I grew up, there was always a desire to reward that sacrifice by looking for lucrative professions and career paths and so on and so forth, particularly as they grew also in their work and in their ministry and in their station. So, my original choices were nothing near entrepreneurship. I sort of went from, I looked at nano engineering, looked at law, looked at all this stuff. I ended up studying law, being on my path to study law in the university. I had the privilege of going to Canada for university, and I went and I studied law. However, there were several breadcrumbs that God really left for me, and you only connect those dots looking backwards.
Yeah.
The first one was, on the first day of school, I had this Polish French man young man from Ottawa. He just bumped into me at the orientation with all the first years and said, look, my dorm is not ready. Please, can I stay at your place? I just thought about it, and, I'm new here. I don't really know this guy, but I just thought he's homeless. Like, what do you want him to do? I said, Pierre, no problem now. Come to my house. There's no problem. So he stayed at my house that night, and then I think the next night he found somewhere to go. But we became friends. And then, the way my school worked, my school was mostly a trade school, University of Waterloo. So people used to go and work and then come back for school. Like, you would go to school 3 months, work 6 months, come back to school, like that. So we weren't on the same stream. We call them streams. We weren't on the same term. So, one term randomly, I had already, forgotten even because he had gone to work in Silicon Valley, and we just bumped in the Student Life Center. I was on my way to eat lunch. He was coming from somewhere. I just bumped into him and he was like, how far, where have you been? This. So he started telling me about what he had been doing in Silicon Valley, working for an incredible entrepreneur called Joe Lonsdale, who was part of the PayPal mafia, all sorts of things, right? And I was like, oh, wow, like this, your life sounds extremely interesting. Maybe it's a little bit better than what I've been doing, because I worked at the United Nations. I then led the school newspaper. So it was a different path entirely for me. But that chance meeting completely transformed the trajectory of my life, because what would happen after that was, the school had set up a residence for entrepreneurs, which boasted a lot of people who are now legends today. Eric Mikogovsky, the founder of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin, a lot of other people, and Ted Livingston, so many people. So I had basically, so I couldn't afford the residence.
Yes.
But I was plugged into that community, and I started to see what these people could do as entrepreneurs. And I was probably one of the few Africans or even Black people that were in that community. You understand? So it was an incredible learning journey. We started a company together called bookneto.com. The company ultimately failed, but we learned so much over 3 years. I worked with some incredible people. My CTO at the time, Gerard Setti, is currently the CTO of an interesting company called Substack that's very big now. So many relationships were built during that time. And that was sort of God really seeding me and preparing me for what ultimately do. After the company failed, I decided, okay, I'm going home, because this thing that I've seen, I have to be able to do it in Nigeria.
Wow.
So before I went home, my friend Pierre said, why don't you follow me to Silicon Valley, spend some months there. At least if you want to copy what we are doing, go and see what it looks like at the source. And so I went there, I had an internship, spent some time with a company called Zambato. Now they do securities, but then they were selling municipal bonds. And there were a lot of things I learned. I spent a lot of time with Joe Lonsdale, spent a lot of time in the Valley, met a lot of people that now are famous. But it was a beautiful way to sort of see things, when God just puts you somewhere. And then eventually I came back to Nigeria fully, July 4th or 5th of 2013. And then at that time I had started another company now called Fora. And that company was supposed to do somewhat of what we're trying to do at Bookneto, but with a slight twist, sort of helping professors that teach at multiple campuses manage their classes across the campuses. But we didn't get permission from NUC. And that was I would say, that was my Valley period, So I went through an incredible time where, things seemed to just be going down. And, I was really holding on to God in that period. And, I would say, God really just came through for me. So in a miraculous way, I had met an entrepreneur called Jeremy Johnson. At the time, he was one of the co-founders of a company called To You. I'd met him a while back while I was still sort of toying with the idea of Fora, just to learn. And, we had forgotten about each other. But as Fora's business sort of pivoted towards something that he had experience in, I wanted to go back and get some guidance and perhaps some investments from him. Now, as God would have it, things had gone really, really bad. In fact, that December, I went home, which is a very embarrassing thing to do for a young man who has come back into the country. I went home. I participated in the fasting and prayer that January. We usually do ours in Foursquare in January.
January, yeah.
So I did it. I really was seeking God's face. And, God said, look, I remember the word God gave me. He said, look, go back to Lagos and you grow in wisdom and favor with God and men, that particular verse. And, I went back to Lagos, and things just started turning around. First of all, we had an investor we had pitched a long time ago. He came in, he said, look, I like this new model. Why don't we put in some money? They put in some money. Then he said, we'll fly you to New York for an accelerator program. Flew to New York. My co-founders at the time were in Toronto because they didn't want to move back. And I also didn't think it was expedient because I was like, me, I'm here suffering. I wouldn't want you to come and join me. So you people stay where you are. Anyway, so we met up in New York, and I used that as an opportunity to see if I could see my friend again. And I emailed and emailed and emailed, and he wasn't responding. Unknown to me, that week was his birthday, and the week that the company was IPOing, his company was going to IPO. I didn't even know.
Super busy for him.
Very, very busy. So I extended my trip, Holy Spirit extended again. I extended again. And eventually, he just, the day before I was supposed to leave, he emails me out of the blue and says, I'm so sorry I missed this. It was my birthday and we're IPOing our company. Let's meet up somewhere this evening. I said, that's not a problem. Obviously, that's not a problem. So I went, we had a very long meeting at Fresh & Co., talked a lot of things, and then that was when we now started working on Andela. And that completely changed the trajectory of my story. So I'm just telling this story. What actually happened was Fora became Andela.
Andela, okay.
Right? Fora then became Andela. So, then we started to focus on the training business and so on and so forth. So I only tell this long story to just say, at the end of the day, God ordered my steps into technology. It wasn't the original plan. It wasn't my plan, definitely. I didn't sit down somewhere and say, I want to be a technologist. It was just, I don't believe in coincidences, but leading by leading. You understand what I'm saying?
And bringing things together.
Bringing things together.
Today, Andela is a global company, worth over $1 billion.
Yes.
And wow. And that's not the only company. You went on to found with others, Flutterwave, which is worth over $1 billion today. Both are unicorns.
Yes.
We have this myth about pastors' kids, where it's like, they're always trouble. You've probably heard about the PKs. They're going to cause trouble. And their stories and stories. So it's wonderful to see a pastor's kid who is not causing trouble, but solving troubles. What did your parents do right? Tell us a bit, take us back to your upbringing. What did they do right?
I don't think it's about what my parents did right, as much as it's about God's grace, first of all. But I would say the one thing my parents did was pray. I think what a lot of people don't really understand about pastors' kids, the Bible says the seed of the righteous are blessed, right?
Hallelujah.
And the challenge with that also is that, it's in the Bible, so the devil knows too.
They will fight it.
So they will fight it by any means necessary. So, I had my trouble phase or my troubled days, and I'm not sure that I can't sit here and say, maybe there was something my parents did that other parents were not doing or something like that. But, I think, at the end of the day, it was just the grace of God, really, ultimately. The benefit is, there's so much in your residual as a pastor's kid that guides your life. Much. You understand?
It's that scripture that says, train up a child in the way he should go.
Yes.
And afterwards, he would not forget.
And you're born into it. You're born literally into the faith, right? So you actually don't realize until you are under a lot of stress how much you have soaked in. In terms of
you gave your life, you said, at 7 years old, but it didn't become real to you until you had some experiences.
Yeah. I would say multiple experiences. I would say my faith journey has not been a straight path. You understand what I'm saying? And it's still something that I continually, renew, engage. And so for me, I've had many moments, to be very honest.
Can you pick some of the key ones for us?
For me, I would say there was a point in time, maybe I'll mention two,
please,
that were very poignant. So one was, after Booknedo failed and I moved to Nigeria, Fora, and Fora's first version failed. That was a key moment for me, right?
2014, 2015.
2013 actually.
2013, okay.
So towards, keep in mind, came in July, and I had gotten off on a high. I was looking for a permission from NUC, and NUC declined. Money was short. So by December it has gotten really bad. So that's I would say from October to February. That was it was me and God in one trouser. October 2013 to February 2014.
You set out to seek Him.
So it was important for me, and I had many incredible encounters, and then as God starts to lift you, there's a tendency to now start to rely on your own strength.
Yes.
And I would say, I wouldn't say necessarily that one falls away from the faith, but you just rely less on God, right?
You start leaning on your own understanding. And so I went through that, and then in 2016, I remember that my birthday of 2015, my birthday, everything was going well around me, but there was a widening void, where I felt like, God, is this really what you want me to be doing? I was starting to question, yes, this is going very well, but is this the role? Is this all there is to this? And, so this was 2016. It came to a head for me, and I remember that my birthday, I went back home to Warri, and I went and I sought God's face again, and that was when I actually received the instruction to leave the company. So I left Andela at that time,
right, in 2016, and to start Flutterwave, right? To join. Then I was joining Flutterwave as one of the co-founders. So I joined in 2016. That was another major moment for me. And then maybe a third major moment for me was, more recently. So 2022. I had just gone through an interesting episode in my life where, I felt like I had done a lot of things right, by the grace of God, and there were challenges at the company I had founded, but I thought, if one has done right, you understand what I'm saying? I had no role in the challenges. You're innocent, but you're being, accused of something that you really don't know anything about. And both personally, publicly, and privately, I was being accused, about things that, quite frankly, I had no hand in, didn't understand, didn't know, didn't really had any hand in. And really, that was another moment for me to seek the face of God in a very deep way. So I would say it's been multiple faith encounters.
They made Jesus closer and closer.
No, absolutely.
And closer
they remind you again and again that there's not very much you can do outside of Him, right? So
now you've explained why you left Andela.
Yes.
It was God calling you to, and you've stayed part of Andela even though you left it.
Yes.
And you continue to be a shareholder in Andela as it continues to grow across the world.
Yes.
But Flutterwave was a bit different. You left Flutterwave in 2017?
I left in 2018.
2018.
Yes. In October
why did you leave Flutterwave?
So, that was a more complicated scenario because it was a range of things, I think the first thing, whenever I join or leave companies, I think one thing that I try to do is to be guided by God in my big decisions. And there's a way that God speaks to you when it's time. So there's a lot of decisions that I make that actually, in the moment, you seem like you are crazy. Right? It's only in hindsight that people are like, God, wow, you are such a genius. But really what it was you were just moving in faith, in complete faith, right? You really didn't know what you were doing. And I feel like that my leaving Flutterwave was one of those moments. There were certain signs that it was time for me to take my leave. And so that was why I left in October of 2018. And actually, the next assignment I took on was working with Madam Obi Ezekwesili on her presidential campaign. So that was sort of the circumstance. Me exiting, I actually exited completely in 2021. And that was also God's leading, both on the financial decision side, but also, you know, from a perspective of, quite frankly, you know, from a conflicts of interest perspective, God was calling us to start a venture capital fund, and I didn't want us to be encumbered by the relationship in terms of, oh, are you going to take my idea to Flutterwave and so on and so forth. So we sort of officially severed ties in terms of I sold my stake to new owners, but I continue to maintain a good relationship with my co-founders.
Was this before the 2018? Was that before the controversies in Kenya?
It's so funny. I left before all of that happened.
Because, you know, the Flutterwave entered into this not too good PR things. In Kenya with money laundering issues, central bank issues, and you were gone by then.
Well, there were attacks. There were a lot of attacks. There were a lot of attacks. That's the reality. And there were also a lot of decisions that were not properly made, you know, or things that were not properly considered. And I don't know all the details because I was not there. But I think the funniest part of it was, you know, I wasn't there. You know, by when I left in 2018, we were in Kenya, but we were there. You know, very, very early days, we had a partnership with M-Pesa and another company that was transacting. We had very little volume. Most of our business was in Nigeria, although we had started to set the stage for Pan-African expansion. I had people that had gone to those countries and so on. So obviously, we hadn't gotten to the level where a money laundering accusation would be relevant. I think for me, the fundamental issue of that period was really, what was happening behind the scenes was that I was about to go and raise $100 million fund. Because that was for Future Africa.
Future Africa, okay, good.
Right, so I'd left Flutterwave.
While this was going on,
I was raising a fund. So I remember the day that the investigative reporters news broke, I was actually presenting to a group in Abu Dhabi. In Dubai, you know, and going there. But, you know, I think God really used that incident to rescue me, if I can say so.
How so?
Well,
because I would think that everybody knows you as Mr. Flutterwave.
Yes.
So it would, even though you're no longer there.
No, definitely. It had that fallout. In fact, the funding fell through. So that was really the deliverance. The funding fell through. Unknown to me, the markets would also fall. So you can imagine being on a journey to raise $100 million fund, and maybe you've already secured some commitments, and now your worry will be threefold, right? So first of all, if you have not closed, it will be a much more difficult fund to close given the market environment. The second thing was that actually right now, we worry more about returns than the money. So you're now like, how do I deploy $100 million in this market environment and return the money back to investors? And the third, it would have just been a different organization, right? And that was the path we were on, and it was not the path that God wanted us to be on at all. And that was maybe his way of getting our own attention, right? I feel like, you know, and that was when that was my most recent sort of incredible jolting encounter, you know, with God, where, you know, I had started to sort of drift from a purpose and mission perspective. And God was really trying to get my attention to say, no, this is not the ministry that I gave you, you know.
You're not here just for your own things. You're here on a mission.
We are, you know, we are sent. And, you know, it's not about building a big $1 billion fund. You know, it's about really impacting on people, filling a gap at the earlier stages, which is what we do. So we went from, I had 35 people. After that incident, I came down to, I think now I have about 9 people. Some of them are even part-time or contract. And my fund at the time was growing. I mean, we're about to go from $10 million fund to $100 million fund. We now we're like a $25-30 million fund. And actually, you know, I look back at that time and I was like, what was I thinking? Right? Because if that didn't happen, we would definitely have had a successful raise off the back of all these unicorns, and you know, you are getting the accolades and the press, and everybody wants to put in money. Yeah. But then we would be in such a mess now. You know, we'll be on a completely different path.
So tell me about the future vision, the vision of future Africa, because you're hinting at that.
Yeah. So, you know, God gave us a word during COVID, in Jeremiah 29 verse 11, just before COVID, and said, look, that's where, you know, it talks about, you know, I know the future I have planned for you, right? And it's a future, you know, that is supposed to be good. And the word really was from God was really, look, I need a partner that can work with me to bring this future to pass in Africa. I need somebody that can engage, you know, institutions to deliver the future vision that I have for Africa. And that's what we do, right? And the interesting thing about our approach is that we take a good hard look at the big challenges.
The big problems.
The big problems. Youth unemployment, you know, energy, hard problems, you know, to solve. And then we back those entrepreneurs that are solving those problems and help them build a global business on the back of that. And so that's what we do. We're usually first check investors. So we write very, you know,
very beginning,
very beginning, right? We started out, you know, $25,000, you know, $10,000 even, you know. Now we're doing slightly bigger checks, $250,000, $500,000. But you know, we've grown this organically through the years. Very early stage, early stage. Work with the entrepreneurs, introduce them to customers, help them build their business model, help them build their products. You know, so we really, we're basically like
a global brand
on the way to building a massive global brand. So one of our big success stories is a company called Move. So if you use Uber, in Nigeria, we have the Suzuki cars. I don't know if you see them on the road. We call them Swifts or Pressos. So we actually lease those cars to the Uber drivers. So prior to us coming, the Uber drivers would take somebody's third-hand car that was very broken down and everything, and would just be paying 25,000 naira a week on those cars. You know, roughly about $25 a week out of maybe $60 a week that he's making. And very little to take home, and he has no hope of owning that asset, which constitutes the vast majority of his sweat.
Everything.
So what we do is we give him a path to owning the vehicle by riding, and then we work with Uber to manage the repayments, and then we have an assets management, asset-backed finance business that's built on the back of this exchange. And that business has done very well. $750 million business today. Uber just recently $50 million.
Wow, starting from scratch.
We started in 2020 in the middle of COVID.
And it's just a 4-year-old business.
Just a 4-year-old business.
And once you talked about seed funds.
I put the first check. I was the first check investor. God really just led us, you know, and gave us a lot of favor with the people at Uber. And it was an impossible business to set up, but you know, we managed to do a job. And the CEOs are amazing. Ladi Delano and Jide Odunsi are both strong believers as well. And we managed to build a very valuable business in a very short period.
So the key for you has always been to look at the hard problems.
Very difficult problems.
Say, look, here lies opportunity.
Yes.
This one that people are running away from.
That is where you will find us. Exactly
this is where
there.
The gold mine is.
That's
if we can just solve this one, then everybody will go home and smiling to the bank.
The beautiful thing about what we managed to do was that we solved that problem in Lagos, and then we took the business global.
Okay.
So right now we manage all the cars in Dubai,
Oh, you're doing the
electric
same
cars,
thing
same
all
business.
around,
In
huh?
India, we're in London, when a few other countries. We're going to the US later this year.
Wow.
So
So
it's
this is made and the cradle was
Lagos.
Africa.
It was in
Lagos, made in
Lagos.
Lagos, exported globally.
Yes. So we even have our warehouse in Ladipo.
Wow.
Yes. So that's just and it started from there, and now it's a global business.
You know, Iyin, as you speak, I can't help but think of the reality of Nigeria and Africa, of course.
Yeah.
Just the number of people just doing anything they can to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Because, economically, things have become harsher than before, tougher. So it's very difficult to convince the youth, not even the youths, almost everybody, that there is still gold to mine here.
Yes.
But you are mining gold. You are literally mining gold here and exporting it around.
Yes.
You did that with Andela.
Yes.
You did that with Flutterwave because it started here. It became a global thing and solving problems. What can we do? What, in your view, would help to bring a shift for people to see what is here? Because it seems it's not everybody that can see it, and it's difficult to see. What kind of glasses do we need to, specs do we need to wear? What kind of glasses do you need to put on?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. My sense is that what I feel like my generation is still struggling with is a question of purpose, right? Why am I here? And I think that's what is reflected in this Japa, because, I was one of, I was pilloried a lot, especially by my peers when I said, guys, this whole idea of, I want to live in, especially after October 2020 and SARS, and all that. I want to go to the UK, it's safer, this, that. I said, those societies, people built them. And the people that build them don't look like you. So they didn't build them for you. Why not be here and find the vineyard where God wants you working to bring this country up to be similar to that? And those places are options for you. You have the resources to go and rest. You understand? Okay, maybe your children or your wife wants to go, you can send them, but you are not going to be very useful over there. As useful as you are over there, as you are here, especially if you're trying to solve a problem here. And I think it takes a mindset of purpose for you to stay here, particularly as it gets tougher and tougher.
Harsher.
Gets tougher and tougher. And it takes a lot of faith, a lot of great faith to do business here. And a lot of people, I think, because they are not really listening to God anymore. I think they just make a decision on the basis of what they see, the circumstances they see. I was reading Nehemiah the other day. I think it was Nehemiah 4. And I was just reading, and, this is somebody that jackpot, right? And then came back to Jerusalem because there were walls that needed to be built. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, right? There were Tobiases and Sanballats that were making sure that his life was hard, right? But they kept building. Remember the words I picked out, they kept building, they kept building. They kept building, they stand on guard. They kept building, they stand on guard. And I think it's really, if you're not a believer, I think you can make any decision you like, right? Because, ultimately, he doesn't own your life, right? So there's nothing. But if you're a believer, I think those decisions they shouldn't be treated with levity. You shouldn't be going where you don't have a mission. And I think a lot of people who made costly mistakes with their lives and their ministry by making that move, where there are things that God maybe proposed that they will do here, and because of they were distracted by the more worldly cares. You know, they made decisions that perhaps, you know, if they had made decisions that were more aligned with God's will for their lives, they would still be here and they would be contributing.
That's so beautiful. Let's land this by talking about family. It's a bit difficult when you become popular, famous, to find the right wife, because you have so many people running after you, and everybody will pretend that you're the love of my life. And many people go like, I wish I'd married when nobody knew me. But you married when you had become well known as the most influential tech guy in Africa. How did you say you married right? So
no, absolutely.
What happened? How did you get it right in spite of all the noise around you?
Well, I mean,
tell us who your wife is.
Yes.
We'll put a picture on the screen.
I'm not sure if she would appreciate being put on blast. Like, she's very private. She likes to be behind the camera, not in front. But no, you know, I married an amazing woman of God. She's American, and we have one amazing child, Karis. I think for me, you know, God really led me when it came to the question of marriage, because the kind of life that I lead and I live, right? The truth is, my friends always marvel. They're like, Iyin, how did you do? Because my wife would never let me take some of the risks that you take, you know, and agree to be led in the way that you lead, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
so, and they say, how did you do? I say, look, it's really important for you to get, you know, God's guidance, and I feel like God really sent her to me. And you know, I met her here in Lagos, actually, even though she's not Nigerian. I met her here in Lagos. We were friends. And then, you know, during the time that Flutterwave was scaling, it was important for us to run some of our operations closer to our investors to build trust out of San Francisco. Yeah. And that was when she was doing her master's in crisis communications. So we became much closer during that period of time. And then, you know, while I was there, you know, I like to say she was perhaps the one critical gift that Flutterwave gave me, because we got married, and you know, the way I know that it was indeed God's will for my life is the journey we've been on since we got married. Because you can imagine, we got married in 2018, and a few months later, I resigned
from Flutterwave.
Right? And I went to start working for Madam Obi's campaign. We moved together to Abuja. She was pregnant. You know, by that December, January, she was pregnant of 2019 when we started the campaign. And she walked through the pregnancy for the campaign.
Yeah.
Then we went back to the US. You know, she went back to the US. I came after. And then, you know, I was in the US. I was actually planning to settle in the US. And God was telling me, if you stay here,
it's your mission.
Yes, if you stay here, you know, I don't know whose mission you're on here. You know, so we had to come back to Lagos, and so we were living in Yaba, in Unike. I don't know any other woman that would be doing that, you know, with me, you know.
Your kind of life of just stepping into the water,
exactly, and
taking
just
up big problems, and
you understand. So it's really God that gives you a great wife.
So the key thing is just be led by God.
You have to be. I think the more prominent you are, the more important it is to be led. There were a lot of you know, opportunity. You know, one would have thought I would have ended up with somebody prayer warrior, Bible, more maybe a sister in the church or something. And there were lots of those, but God kept telling me, no, this is not.
I have the right fit.
This is not the right fit. And culturally, people underestimate how. I actually, one of the things that one of the challenges that we faced early on, she was not Nigerian, right? But I really thank God for my parents, because I think it was my dad that was like, look, and my mom, my dad and my mom. In fact, I remember when I was going to present her to my family, I had made up my mind. I said, look, this was in 2018. I said, look, if you guys don't agree, I'm going ahead anyway, because I've received a word, and I was ready to just show them and move on with my plans. But the warmth with which they receive, I know. So the joke in our family is that she's the real daughter and I'm just the adopted son. So yeah, and I just thank God, for giving me such an amazing woman. And my advice to young people is really just wait on God's choice for you. Love is not enough.
God must lead.
God has to lead you.
Thank you so much, Iyin. It's been so refreshing talking with you. I've even learned so much this morning. I never knew that right there in Yaba to Alagobeji is a whole Silicon Valley.
Yes. That is the real. It doesn't look like the one they show you on TV.
I thought it would probably be in Lekki, but you're saying it's the real hub of it, of these startups and tech companies is just all the way there towards Unilag.
Yes, because that's where all the talent is.
Wow. So much is happening that sometimes we don't know. Yeah. And people might look down on that part of Lagos not knowing that global things are being seeded there.
Yeah. So many global personalities have walked those streets.
Wow.
From Mark Zuckerberg to all the people, Jack Dorsey, everybody that we look up to, we were just hosting Tony Fadell, the founder of Nest, and one of the inventors of the iPod, just 2 weeks ago. So a lot happens in that small neighborhood, you see.
Thanks so much for all you do.
Yes.
And you make us proud. Not only that, the fact that you stand firmly for your faith in Christ, and that you're not ashamed of the gospel, and that you see this as a mission. We've been talking to Iyin Aboyeji, and he's known for founding 2 unicorns, like they call them, companies valued for way beyond $1 billion. That is Andela and Flutterwave. And he's presently pioneering several other companies that soon will become, because this 750 million one will soon become a
I would say
it will become a $1 billion company very soon.
But for the market environment, it would already have. But thank God.
750 million is just very close to that. Thank you so much for all you do. Thank you for coming on this show.
I'm so grateful.
Unfortunately, we have to stop here.
Understood.
And I want to thank you, viewers, for joining us this week. We'll see you same station, same time next week.
Thank you.
Please like this video and leave a comment below. Let's know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell button and share this video with somebody else.